Okay, Madam Chair, we're ready to begin.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. It is 5:30 p.m. and I'm calling the June 1st, 2021 meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board to order. Please silence your cell phones. May we please have the roll call?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Member Miller,
Here.
Member Hanson,
Here.
Member Rosenau,
Here.
Member Kaiser,
Here.
Member Dixon has not arrived yet, Vice Chair Nelson,
Present.
and Chair Huff.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Okay. May we please have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, the agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board on the west side of Council Chambers in accordance with state law.
Does the board have any revisions to the agenda?
No.
Okay. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion from Dan Kaiser, a second from Scott Miller. And is there any discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes 6-0. Okay, next, public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of this board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values all of your comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the hearing. Staff, has anyone requested to comment on a non-public hearing item or item that is not on today's agenda?
Yes, we have a few people here to speak. We have Ron and Barbara Marshall. We have Susan Sequoia Jensen, who I know are here to speak. I think that Mr. Walsh and Mike's iPhone are here for other matters. So Susan, could you turn on your camera, please, and unmute your mic? And you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Quite often, the buildings, sites, and structures most endangered and in need of preservation efforts do not have the property owner's consent to preserve them. I'm referencing item 5A, that will be a discussion item this evening. So I address you today as an advisory board member of PSPF and as the author of the nomination for the bank. I learned a great deal about the subject property. Initially, I thought the historic significance is primarily attested to the bas-relief panels at the front entry, created by world-renowned artist Lawrence Tenney Stevens. However, further exploration revealed the process of the building design and panels as a collaboration of artist, architect, and client. The client was the bank manager, Herbert Sampson. He was instrumental in the creation of both the building and the public art panels. I traced and contacted family members, still residents of Palm Springs, and learned of his deep roots and involvement within the community. His passion for Palm Springs and its history was the impetus of the collaboration between artist Lawrence Tenney Stevens and architect Joseph Bing Wong. I believe as preservationists, it is our duty to protect the legacy of the passionate individuals who helped to create our world-class mid-century Mecca. Their efforts and legacy are extant via material and form and should be revered and preserved. We are so fortunate to have this architecture to represent our past, which continues to function in our present lives, as well as for future generations. I request HSPB support to allow the voices of Herb Sampson, Joe Wong, and Lawrence Tenney Stevens to be heard, as opposed to a detached owner's corporate representative negating the property's proper review and proposed honorable designation. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there other speakers?
Yes, I believe Ron and Barbara Marshall may wish to speak on this. Ron and Barbara, if you would like to open your camera and unmute your mic.
Tam, we don't have anything more to add than what Susan just stated.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Burkett has joined us. Mr. Burkett, did you want to speak during public comment? If so, please unclear. There you go. Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, thank you very much. I am going to be a spectator this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all we have, Madam Chair, that I'm aware of.
Okay, so seeing no other speakers, we will proceed to the consent agenda. 1A, approval of the minutes. Are there any revisions to the minutes of the meeting of May 4, 2021? Nope. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 4, 2021?
I so move.
Okay, so Ms. Hanson has made a motion and Mr. Rosenall has seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Let us proceed to agenda item number 2. There are no public hearings today, so we'll move on to, there's no unfinished business either. So let us proceed to new business, agenda item 4A. New business is Walter and Kate Driver, owners for alterations to a Class 3 historic site located at 688 East Vereda Sir. So may we please have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The owners of this particular home have submitted an application seeking to do modifications to the home, which they have recently purchased. Their desire is to move forward with the improvements that they wish to do to the home. At this time, they are not interested in seeking historic designation. The home is a Class 3 site, as noted in your staff report. And in the material that has been provided by the applicant, you have some information on the background, the chain of title, and some other materials. The home is from the 1930s, and it is constructed in the traditional Spanish colonial revival style. It's in good condition overall on a very large lot that's heavily landscaped with a swimming pool and an accessory dwelling structure also on the site. We've identified the project as our analysis in the staff report does go through considering this particular site against the criteria in the city's historic preservation ordinance. And we note that it would be a reasonable property to consider as a possible example of a home from the period between the wars from 1919 to 1941. However, we noted that it is not particularly an exemplary piece of this type of architecture. There have been modifications made to it, as you all saw from your site visit. A number of doors have been replaced with new doors. There have been a number of different additions added onto the home over time. So we recognize the home as being potentially eligible, but in this case, we didn't feel that it stood out as a particularly noteworthy example of this type of architecture. So our recommendation at this time is for the board to take no action and allow the applicant to move forward with the improvements that they wish to make. I'm available to answer any questions, and Dwayne Smith is here with us representing the applicant and owner who can clarify any further questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lyon. Does the board have any questions for staff? Any questions for Mr. Lyon? Okay, And you had mentioned that the applicant is present. Would the applicant like to speak? You would have 3 minutes if you'd like to share anything more about the project for the board's consideration.
Yes, thank you very much. I would. Ken actually described the existing state very well. As he mentioned, my client is the newer owner of the house. They are very much in love with the Spanish Revival style and love those elements of the home. So they definitely want to preserve that as much as possible. But in our review of the existing site and the structure, it really became clear that the original structure that was built seemed to be more like about a 2,200 square foot home. So it was quite a bit smaller than what's there today. So what we have found is there are probably about 4 to 5 additions over the years at various eras, all done in different styles with a variety of roof styles, a variety of window and door shapes. And we find that the integrity of the original Spanish Revival style is not intact. Our goal in the renovations is to actually bring it all together with one unifying kind of cohesive style to try and unify some of the bad renovations that have been done over the years. And a lot of that is in interior work that is not relevant to this board's review, but there are some really bad kind of additions done inside that we want to remedy through that will require kind of remodifying or modifying the structure significantly. But in doing so, we're being very, very cognizant of that authentic style, and we want to really preserve that. So we're going to great lengths to maintain the original Spanish elements like the exposed rafter tails, the gable roof styles, the low slope roofs, etc. So a lot of effort being put into really preserve that Spanish Revival style and kind of bring it back to life, back in line with the original structure. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any further questions of Mr. Smith representing the applicant? Any questions? I actually have a question. Maybe you can remind me. You mentioned the original, what you thought was the original square footage of the structure, and what is original, and then what is like now?
So original we couldn't find any evidence in any of the permit records of what the exact square footage was originally, but based on the various roof styles and various interior structural styles, it looks like the very original house was probably about 2,200 square feet, somewhere around there, possibly a 3-bedroom. Currently, we have the existing main house at 3,393 square feet. There is an additional garage that does not seem to be original, or if it was original, it was a separate garage. That's 371 square feet. And then there's an existing ADU structure at the northeast corner of the lot that is 774 square feet that was built at a later date that has a flat roof and a parapet wall around it. There's also an existing pool house, which is just basically a bathroom and a sauna that's adjacent to the pool that was also not an original structure that's about 100 square feet. So all in, we currently have, what's that? For about 5,000, just under 5,000 square feet on the lot. And we're going to be we are taking off some of the existing structure and rebuilding it with the goal of putting a basement underneath to actually move mechanicals and some other elements into the basement so that we don't add too much square footage to the parcel. But we are netting ground floor about 1,800 square feet on the main house in an addition to what's there today. Plus we're moving the garage to attach to the ADU, and we're adding on about 1,300 square feet to the ADU as well to add some additional functional space and dwelling space.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for clarifying that square footage. It appears that, over the years, several alterations have been made, as you clearly stated. And are there any other questions? Anything else? Mr. Nelson?
I have a question regarding the application and some background on the original architect. So I'm happy to share that when the time is appropriate. Now?
Yes.
Great, great. So first of all, I wanted to thank Dwayne Smith for his research that was included in our packet, and calling out W.C. Pennell, who was the original designer of this house, and just some new information from a Desert Sun article written on the 9th of April, 1937. One of the final homes now nearing completion is the lovely new residence in El Mirador Estate, designed by architect W.C. Pennell and built by contractor Harry E. Holton. Meyer Newstetter is the president, and Joseph B. Levy, the vice president and treasurer of the Newstetter Company, the largest and most exclusive ladies department store west of the Mississippi and located in Denver. They came here with their wives last fall and spent a few weeks at El Mirador. Just 2 days before leaving, they selected the home site and instructed Mr. Pennell to prepare the plans for the new home, taking advantage of his complete service, which consists of preparing plans for the home, landscaping, furnishing it completely, and supervision of all until the home is ready for occupancy. They left the matter in his hands and did not see the place again until a few days ago upon their return. "We are delighted with the results," quote unquote, said Mr. Levy. "Mr. Pennell and Mr. Holton have demonstrated that they know their business. We were saved all the time and worry of looking after details and got just exactly what we wanted and should have here in the desert area, far better than we could have chosen ourselves. I'm sure we saved money by leaving the matter in such competent hands." Other affluent homes constructed here this season, credited to Mr. Pennell, are the residences of H.A. Anderson, John Tyler, president of Farmers International Insurance, Dwight Bridgen, Foster Dudley, Mary Patterson Rout, nationally famous writer, and Mrs. Richardson Baldwin. Pennell has been an architect in Southern California for 35 years, and for 15 was associated with John C. Austin and the firm of Austin Pennell Architects. His plan of complete architectural, financial, building, and home service has met with strong demand and satisfactory response here in the desert. He specializes only in the better class of homes. So just a little background on that. I'm sorry I didn't have time to send it before the meeting. So he was fairly well known in LA, and he did quite a few residences here, even though Mr. Smith said in the research that he did that he was mainly known for theaters and one other thing. So that just gives us some more background. And I would also take issue with the statement that not much of the historic integrity is intact. I do believe in the front of the home, when you enter the front door and that little Spanish style courtyard with the beautiful staircase leading up to the rooftop balcony or gloriette or whatever you might want to call it, that door retains what feels like to me a pretty original sense of integrity in terms of that original intent that was clear in Mr. Pennell's work. So that's pretty much my input at this point, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson, for sharing that. You always do such excellent research. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Smith? Any other questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, may I have a motion, please? A motion? Okay.
I move that we accept the recommendation from the staff report.
Okay.
And allow this renovation to go forward. It's a very sensitive renovation, and Jade, exactly what you're talking about is basically going to be preserved. So this will allow this house to go for another 100 years anyway.
Very good. So we have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Kaiser, a second by Mr. Miller. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Lyon.
I would only ask if Member Nelson would be kind enough to forward the material he found for our archival record on this. That would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Ms. Hanson,
Can I just ask a question of staff, a procedural question?
Sure.
What happens to the class 3 historic site? Does that stay intact or does it drop off of that list?
That's a very good question. When we have some of these that do, of course, get recommended by the board for higher designation, of course, they have the chance to go to potentially class 1 or class 2. On these that wind up going forward and taking no action, we would typically remove them from the list because they would no longer be further considered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I
Discussion?
would like to make an amendment to the motion that it remain on the class 3 list, even once we approve the scope of the application presented to us today, because it is the original house is still there and it is still built prior to 1978, so it is still a class 3 site.
Well, a class 4 site is what would be
Class 4.
eligible to 1978. So we could certainly move it to class 4.
Okay, so what's making it a class 3 now as opposed to class 4?
It was identified as part of the citywide survey as having potential historic significance. So these are the kinds of matters that when they do have a requested alteration come forward, then the board does consider it at that time. And if the board acts as you are appearing to do so here today, the work has been processed, you've considered it further, and no longer is there a request then to further consider it for class 1. Anything that now goes forward on this home is going to further modify and alter it. And so if it doesn't have historic significance as it exists today, it will have less historic significance going forward.
Okay, so the amendment that you made, did you want to withdraw that, Mr. Nelson or Mr. Kaiser? Do you accept
No, I
it?
do not. I still believe that it should remain a class 3 site.
Okay, so Mr. Kaiser, do you accept that amendment to your motion?
If it's possible, I would accept it. I don't know how it works with the city, but if you want to put that in as an amendment, that would be fine with me.
Okay, Ms. Hanson?
Yeah, I just want to further comment on Mr. Lyons' comments. I guess I don't see the point of putting that on the motion. Again, if it's a class 3 and we're already tonight really making that determination that it doesn't deserve any further consideration. And again, to reiterate what he said, what's going to happen as a result of this motion to take no action, it's going to be further altered to a point that it would be even less of a class 3 in my mind. So I don't necessarily agree with that amendment to the motion.
Okay, if I may explain. They're not demolishing the house. They're not doing a major architectural alteration. The original square footage of that house is still there underneath all of the alterations and add-ons. So that's my point. And that the original house from 1937 is still there underneath all those layers. It still is a class 3 house at its core, even though they're doing an update now, and they're going to actually bring back some of those elements according to the applicant's representative. So my feeling is that once a home has been placed on the survey at class 3, that it should not be taken off unless it is either majorly altered or demolished. And I don't believe that this meets either one of those criteria, and that's my personal opinion.
I'm not sure, Ken, that's not part of the criteria, right? I mean, for a class 3. I mean, it seems like it's sort of a marker at the point of a survey. And then when you get to the point where there's a decision to be made about the property, I don't see an advantage to having it remain a class 3. What does that do for the property to have it remain that way?
Well, it doesn't afford very much. Frankly, what it does is if this home were to remain, or any property were to remain on the class 3 list, after going through this kind of analysis, which will further alter the original home, you're really going to then cause this house for subsequent owners that may choose to do some type of exterior modifications to come back through the whole process all over again. And, you know, if the board in its consideration today concludes that the home, you know, lacks sufficient eligibility to put the stay of demolition on it and recommend that we go into an application to redesignate it, whatever is done to the home, either by the current applicant or subsequent owners, as you mentioned, Janet and I have said, the home is going to become further altered. The scope of the work that the current homeowner is proposing is not a restoration project. If it were a restoration project, I may have different opinions and recommendations for you, but this is not a recommendation. This is modifying the home further, although in a respectful way relative to the type of architecture. It's not a restoration project, and so that's why we would not recommend continuing to keep it on class 3. It's really served the purpose when you consider what you're doing today is, here's a person who has a home. The home was identified through a citywide survey as being potentially eligible. In this particular case, it was behind a tall hedge, and so the consultant was unable to further determine whether it had eligibility or not, which is part of why it was on the list. So that's why we would, you know, act as I had mentioned. You know, it's somewhat immaterial whether you wish to keep it on the class 3 list or not. If it were to stay on the class 3 list and, you know, 5 or 10 years from now that a homeowner wanted to further modify the house, unfortunately, if you keep it on the class 3 list, then it comes right back to that board at that time. And now they're looking at a property that's even further modified than what you've got today. So it's somewhat immaterial. It's your choice.
So we have a motion by Mr. Kaiser to have the Historic Site Preservation Board take no action and allow the processing of the building permits for the proposed alterations. And we have a second. So yes, Mr. Miller.
I would just say, I am the seconder, and while Member Nelson, I truly respect the research that you did and the sensitivity to this home. I have to defer to what Staff Member Lyons said regarding the reasoning for keeping it on the list or not. And we're getting our lick at the sucker now, so to speak. And I think we believe that it's not eligible for class 1 or class 2 based on what we've discovered. And so I wouldn't support any amendment that would attempt to keep it on a class 3 list.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Rosen now.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Miller. I think we fear that if we look at many class 3 structures over the course of our run here, we're going to the same conversation again and again. So we sort of need to make a precedent as to what we do with these class 3 structures at this point, as you know, instead of trying to, like, as Ken said, you know, revisit it every time someone wants to do a future alteration or so. So I don't think an amendment is necessary.
Okay. Mr. Nelson.
Yes, I respect all of those statements, and that's precisely why I made the amendment to create a dialogue, because this is truly a unique situation, and it speaks to the future here in Palm Springs, how we have this large collection of pre-1940s Spanish Revival, Spanish Colonial Revival homes, many of which were done by LA area architects that established offices here and who are unfortunately not as well known as some of the earliest architects like John Porter Clark, Albert Gray, who were building in that style when they first came to town. So this was why I brought it up, to have it be in the record and to create this dialogue, because it is very important. And the more we approve these, the more they will disappear. And I think that's a very important thing to remember going forward. That was the original old movie colony, that neighborhood there, and there were very few homes unlike it the way it is now. So thank you all for weighing in on that, and I don't disagree with any of it, and I will retract the amendment now, regretfully.
Okay, all right. And Mr. Lyon?
I just want to add a postscript on this discussion, and I think it's wonderful when the board has this kind of debate and dialogue because it's good for the overall concept of what you're working toward. Keep in mind, if a owner, whether this one or a future one, wishes to submit to the city an application for Class 1 or Class 2 historic site designation, we would be obligated to process it. And a future board would have to wrestle with that very question. So it doesn't spell the end. You know, if a future owner was to really believe that the home had enough credentials to designate, they could certainly make that application, and a future HSPB would have to wrestle with that question.
Okay. Ms. Hanson?
Thank you. I just have one final question and maybe a remark as well, but is there any way right now that there's a history preserved from the survey that this was a Class 3? I don't think the city doesn't have any sort of a database, is that correct, of properties? Because I think one of the things that board member Nelson is saying that it's also important to remember the history of the properties, you know, to know that it had been a Class 3 and it's not, so that, you know, again, over time, we can look back at some of these properties, we can begin to understand, you know, how many there were, how many we're losing. And I don't know if there's any way that the city, you know, can keep that information. I know in paper format, it doesn't do much, but is there any sort of an electronic database where this can be, you know, maintained?
Mr. Lyon?
Yes, actually, every case that's processed by the city retains itself in a case file. Those files don't go away. So when this particular one is considered, and this is kind of one of the first ones that you've considered where it is not one that's being fully demolished or whatever, it will say on the Class 3 list, removed on 6/1/21 via case number 3.4226. And that case file will remain in the city's archives, both electronically and in hard copy. So there actually is a way of documenting it, and there is a way of cross-referencing it if in the future this property were to come forward to the board. There would be data there that would, you know, tie the events together so that you could understand what took place and why this particular board made the decision that it did at that time.
Right. I understand that as part of a case file, but maybe, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, maybe more broadly in terms of having a historic resources inventory.
The Class 3 list will keep that record. It'll show as being declassified, but as per case, this case number.
But is that only in paper format, or is it an Excel spreadsheet? What
It's
format?
on the city's website, and it's in paper and it's electronic.
Okay.
And then with that archive, then Mr. Nelson's information, the research that he did on that article would be included in that. So
exactly, that's why I was asking him for a copy of it. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's good to have that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Mr. Nelson?
Comment on there, and then we'll put it to bed. But another reason why I brought this up and why I made that amendment is because I was thinking of many years ago when I was a realtor, many years ago in this town, and I had a client who was looking in Olaf Palmas, and they had found this beautiful old original 1930s Spanish house that had been bought by the property next door, and they were intending to make it part of the property and turn it into a guest house. Well, lo and behold, they added on to the property and expanded it and changed it, and you couldn't recognize it anymore. But it was still this original, beautiful little 1930s Spanish bungalow. And he said, if I had the chance, I would buy it after they added all that stuff, rip it all off and take it right back. And so I was just looking to the future, how someone might, you know, they might know, or they might find the article by that it was built by Mr. Pinnell. They might find an original photo, because this neighborhood is well documented. We might not have all the information, photos at our fingertips, but I do know that it is documented somewhere, someplace. maybe at the LA County Public Library, resources that are harder to tap into, at a last minute notice. But there are people out there, clients who buy real estate who want that original, and they will rip out all the additions that were made over time to get back to that. So that was another part of my motivation for bringing that up and making that amendment. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you. So we have the motion by Kaiser and second by Miller. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes 6-0. Let us proceed to agenda item 4B. Michael and Lori Jane Gelhard, owners for full demolition of a Class 4 site located at 416 West Hermosa Place. May we please have the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As noted in your staff report, this is a home that was built in 1951, according to the building permit records, as a single-family home. The home, by its age, is considered to be Class 4. And the reason it is not Class 3 is because through that citywide survey a few years ago, that consultant did not find anything noteworthy about this particular property that would have placed it on the Class 3 list. So you're looking at a Class 4 site here, built prior to 1978 in 1951. And again, I will point out this is one of those where Member Nelson's sleuthing is always excellent. And I believe you found, if I'm not mistaken, I'm digging through my materials here quickly. I think you found some information about the person who was credited through the newspaper as having been the builder on this home. And what was interesting is I think I've got in the packet here somewhere, and I'm kind of digging as I talk, so I apologize for that. The original building permit for this home, it's very difficult to read, but it doesn't appear to be the same name that the newspaper credits as the builder. It's a little hard to read. It's toward the very back, and there's an article that was provided crediting the design of this home to a contractor named Arthur Wright. The building permit, it's hard to read, but it doesn't look like the name on the building permit is Wright. But having said that, the property is a large, sprawling ranch-style home. The original permit notes that it was a frame and stucco property. However, from your site visits on this property, you notice that there were many other materials that now exist on the front of the house. There's brick and some stone. There's also some stucco and wood, board and batten on the back. There's a separate small guest unit or casita on the property. We evaluated this project again through the criteria for Class 1 or Class 2 designation. And we did not, again, find anything about this particular home that was sufficiently noteworthy or exemplary that would cause us to recommend that it be stayed from the demolition and moved forward for possible redesignation. And so, as with the last one, our recommendation on this is that the HSPB take no action and allow the applicant to proceed with the demolition of the home. Now, Mr. Gelhard is here on the screen with us, and I don't know if there's anybody else with us representing the owner, but he is here and can answer any further questions that you may have. And I'm, of course, available to answer questions you may have as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lyon. And before we hear from Mr. Gelhard, does the board have any questions of the staff? Any questions for Mr. Lyon? Okay, so I'd like to welcome Mr. Gelhard. You have 3 minutes if you would like to share anything more about the project for the board's consideration. I welcome you.
I certainly don't need 3 minutes. I really don't have anything to add. I think we had a pretty productive couple of site visits. You've seen the property. I really don't have anything to add, but thank you for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Thank you for your presence. And sure. Does anyone have any questions of the applicant? Any questions? This is the time. Questions? Okay, so seeing no questions, may I have a motion, please? Okay, Mr. Nelson, your motion.
No question, but I do have comments.
Well, okay, but did you make a motion? In a second, who's gonna second? Mr. Kaiser, did I?
We don't have a motion. on the-
Did Mr. Nelson make a motion?
I did not.
Okay, so may I have a motion?
Well, I was wanting to comment.
Okay, you want to comment? Yes, absolutely.
So again, for the record, because Ken did point it out, but there was an article that was included in the packet, which I don't know if everyone got the chance to read, but it's worth, again, stating for the record, the most important point in that article. And I just want to mention that Arthur Wright was a resident of Palm Springs beginning in 1934 and was associated with the construction of many commercial and residential buildings in the village, over 100, I believe, and was also associate contractor and superintendent of the Sunset Tower Apartments and Building, which is now the home of Ernest Coffey and the Twist, and formerly Don the Beachcomber. The general contractor of this house that is before us at this time, according to this Desert Sun article, was Barrett and Hilp of San Francisco. Examples of Arthur Wright's work are located throughout the village and the entire desert area. He has supervised the Arcade Building, which is now part of Town and Country Center, the original Palm Springs Biltmore Hotel, which was demolished and is now the Biltmore Condominiums, the original Jewish temple, which we now know as Temple Isaiah, the addition to the water and telephone building, and various others. And it is worth noting that the Weinbergers lived prior to this house at 416 Hermosa Place, or excuse me, not that one, the house at the other end of Hermosa Place, which was later owned by Donald Duncan, which is the largest single-family residence in Old Palmer. So it was an important builder in the area, and it was an important resident. So they were both historically prominent figures in the community during the time that they lived. And that's all I wanted to say. And with that, I will make a motion to approve the application.
Okay.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Nelson, a second by Mr. Kaiser. Is there any further comments or discussion?
May I just clarify, Mr. Nelson, your motion is to take no action and allow the applicant to proceed with the demolition?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So any other discussion, comments? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Let's proceed to agenda item 5A. This is a request of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation for amendment to the HSPB work plan for fiscal year 2020-2021. So Mr. Lyon, would you like to lead that discussion?
Certainly. And you pretty much summed it up and teed it up quite nicely there. As noted in your packet, I've put a brief cover letter on top of this. What the the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation is asking of you today is to consider amending your work plan. As you all pretty much know, and I believe new members may be familiar, each year you do put together your annual work plan, which includes education and outreach and those sites which you're interested in considering working toward possibly making a recommendation for historic designation to the City Council. In your last work plan, this building during the 1920 work plan period, this was on the work plan list. I believe it was the 6th priority in that year's work plan. As you looked at the work plan for 2021, this building was again considered, and I believe as the letter from PSPF reflects, I believe there was discussion at that time that it might be coming in as a private nomination. And so the board at that time did not, with the current work plan, keep it on as a priority. I've included in your packet the work plan. That's a copy of the minutes from those meetings at which the work plans were approved. So I've got in your packet on this particular item, the last 2 pages are excerpts of the minutes which show the work plans for those couple of years. There was also, as I had forwarded to you, a public comment letter from an individual in the community recommending that the board amend its work plan. And that was the same comment that Ms. Sequoia Jensen also was recommending or requesting of you. So what you would need to do on this is understand what your current work plan is. Now, we are currently, we've made it through a little bit of progress. You know, the good news, I guess, on the work plan is when there isn't enough staff time to process the board's work plan, it means we're getting a lot of applications from the public, and that's a good thing. We, of course, from the last session, have worked through and made the nomination of the Las Palmas Liquor Store building. And we have a professional services consultants have been released to do the work on the Arabi Adobe and the Arabi Rock houses. And the Caraccia Pension is the next one that I'll be sending out requests for proposal on. So we've made it through a little bit of the work plan, both from the last year and this year. Those properties that we have not yet begun, of course, are the gas company building, the Willard Martin residence, fire station number 4, and of course, Caraccia, which I'm about to send those proposals out for. So the board's action on this one would be to consider the request from PSPF. And if you choose to move forward with amending your work plan, it would be put on your work plan. And I would ask also that you guys look at it in terms of where would you put it in the priority on your work plan? Because I try to work through these with you in the order that you have prioritized them. That would be what your action would be today, is to consider their request, look at the work plan that you have, decide whether or not you would like to amend your work plan to include it in this year's work plan, or you could also say, this is one that we're interested in. We would be considering putting it on the next year's work plan. So those are your options, or you could simply say, you know, this is an interesting site, but we don't wish to make it one of our priorities at this time. I will note in your application materials or the packet on this particular one, that the owner is not in support of a historic designation on this. PSPF have reached out to the building owner's representative. I have done the same, and you can see the response from the owner's representative in which they do not wish to pursue a historic designation. So I want to talk about that for just a couple of seconds here. Should the board wish to take this forward, you would be taking it forward as a city-initiated designation application. The way the ordinance is written, those applications which are brought to the city by private residences or individuals require owner consent. But for those applications that are initiated by the city through the HSPB's work plan, they do not require owner consent. Now you've got a bit of an awkward situation here in which you have a private organization who have approached the owner trying to encourage them to seek designation, and the owner does not wish to do so. So we will continue to reach out to the owner and notify them of whatever actions you take tonight. And then as it goes into its public hearings, if it does go in that direction, we would continue to notify the owner's representative of those public hearings. It is possible that they would continue to oppose the application throughout the entire process. So you just want to be aware of that as you wrestle with this question. Okay. And then I'll let you answer or have any questions you may have of me.
Okay, Mr. Rosenau.
Yes, to give a little bit of background for our new board members anyways, I sit on the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation board as well. And so I've kind of been privy to all of this. about a year ago or so. It was one of these Zoom meetings I remember where we discussed our list initially, and I was the one that mentioned to this board here that PSPF was already pursuing the Union Bank building. And we were all quite excited because it was one that the HSPB wouldn't have to pay for. We were having that budget crunch due to all the COVID tax money going away, whatever. So we were all kind of happily surprised that that was being taken over by PSPF. And it's my understanding that the work on the application is basically completed by Ms. Sequoia Jensen already and is ready for submission. So my question maybe to Ken initially is, if the work has been done, why can't HSPB use PSPF's completed application? We don't need to reach out to another organization to pay for that, a new nomination. Given the fact that, you know, the work has been done already and we were just happy that someone else was actually doing the work for us.
You're correct.
Good comment. Ms. Hanson?
Yeah, I have got a couple questions of staff. There are on the list now 5 properties. Are you suggesting, I mean, is there a cap of 5, or are you suggesting we add a 6th and then decide where it would go in the, you know, the priority list? Because there's 1, there's 2 2s, a 3, and a 4. So you are handling these in the order in which they were ranked on this plan, correct?
Yes. When the board considers options and you guys all kind of throw everything into a big pot, I then put that together in a list and I ask the board members to rank them. Tell me what is your first priority, second, third, fourth, and fifth. If we've got 10 items on the list, I ask you all to rank those 10. And then through that ranking process, there's a group of them that begin to sort of come to the top. We put together roughly 5 or 6 per year. There's nothing magic about the number. In most past years, we are not able to get through the work plan because we do receive private nominations. So you could, if you wish to do so, put this on your work plan for this year, or you could take things off in order to put this one on, or you could put this one on at the bottom. You could put it anywhere you want. Keep in mind, of course, that I do have consultants working on the ones that I mentioned earlier. So you really have some flexibility in this.
So then things generally, you know, like on this list, 3 and or 4 may end up rolling over into the next work plan.
It could.
And are the work plans established? I see the date on here. I actually was listening in on that meeting, so I do recall the discussion. But so would it be October of every year the work plan is approved?
Well, I usually try to bring this up as early as I can. The city's fiscal year, of course, begins July 1st. And so in a perfect world, I usually try to have you guys working on this through the summer, but you know, things lag. And so you guys got to it this year, I think in October, but yes, generally in that time of year.
And so to continue on board member Rosenau's comments, if the nomination is already prepared so that the city doesn't have to fund it, if this were added to the list, then that nomination could immediately be submitted. Is that true? I mean, there's not really anything staff would have to do, correct?
Other than do our normal public hearing notices and staff report.
Okay.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, question for Mr. Lyon. Is it written or set in stone that nomination brought forth by entities other than the city, which are not sponsored or approved by the owner of the property, are not heard?
The city will not receive a privately nominated application unless it has owner consent.
And that is written somewhere, that is the law of the city?
That is the ordinance.
That is within the historic preservation ordinance.
Correct.
And has it always been there, or was it added later? Do you know?
It was added with the amendment that was done in 2019.
And do we know why that amendment was done?
I don't know the exact reason, but it was the way that the council amended the ordinance.
Okay.
There are different cities around California and around the country who have different requirements for their applications to be received. Some cities do not require owner consent. In the past, Palm Springs did not require owner consent, and there are other cities who do require owner consent, and there has been case law supporting both approaches.
So what I'm understanding is that despite all of that, we could use PSPF's nomination and try to move forward with the nomination or not?
Yes, what they're asking the board to do is to take this project on as part of your work plan. It would then become a city initiated nomination, and therefore it would not require owner consent.
And therefore, we wouldn't have to write a new nomination.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Rosenau?
Yeah, just going back to kind of taking where Jade was going with that. I guess I understand that when Mr. Lyons said that the ordinance changed in 2019, I just kind of want to revisit some of the past preservation successes, Town and Country Center, the Santa Fe Savings and Loan, the Capture Plaza, or it was Takowitz Plaza back then, that were buildings that had no owner support for it. And some of these are very definitely threatened. There would be only one quarter of the Takowitz Plaza still existing. There would be nothing of the Town and Country had these community generated nominations not come through. And so this is probably a point for a bigger discussion down the road, but we just need to remember that owner, especially with these commercial buildings, owner support is often not there on threatened buildings.
Good. Ms. Hanson?
So if I think I'm understanding correctly, Mr. Lyon, you said that 1 and 2 on this list, the priority list now, are already in process, correct?
Las Palmas Liquors has already been processed. The Airbnb, Adobe, and Rock Houses are in process, and I'm working on putting out the proposals right now for Karakia.
Okay, so it seems like if the board was in favor of adding this to the list, it could actually even become the next priority because the nomination is already complete without impacting the remaining order of the properties on the priority list.
I would agree. Mr. Miller?
Question, I think for staff. I'm not familiar with the gas company building, although I've seen that reference. What building is that and where is it located?
It's a small building on North Sunrise Way. If you're familiar where the new Riverside University Health Center building is being built, it's just north of there.
Okay, so that's what I was expecting you to say. So what I would hope that we would do in factoring in whether or not we want to move the Union Bank onto the list, and I have no objection. I think it's a great building. In my mind, it's, does it go now or do we prioritize it for our next round of list? It would seem to me that the Union Bank probably doesn't have a lot of current development pressure to be bulldozed and turned into something yet. At least that's my assumption, based on the fact that it's an operating bank. Whereas the gas company building, I think it's got a for sale sign, and is that potentially more likely to feel the pressure to be torn down, such that we don't want to deprioritize that in favor of the Union Bank? Just throwing those ideas out there. I would hate to lose the gas company building if that were to fall lower on the priority list for something that isn't feeling the development pressure right now.
Mr. Lyon?
You have some safety valves in place. Even if an owner of the gas company building were to come forward requesting to scrape it, just like you saw recently in the class 3 and class 4 buildings that you've considered, that would have to come before the board.
Okay.
I believe I'm I don't have the list in front of me. I can pull it while you're deliberating on this, but I believe that the gas company building is class 3. So even major alterations of the gas company building would be coming before the board for consideration, and certainly a full scrape would as well.
And again,
Go ahead, Mr. Miller. Finish.
just to follow up briefly, I assume there's the fire station number 4, there's no pressure on that one to be turned into something since the city presumably owns it, I assume. So that's one that I'm not so worried about at this point, if we were to want to move something else onto that list.
Okay. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out that the list that some have been referring to here was for the work plan of 2019-2020, which started with Las Palmas Liquors and ended with the animal hospital. That was a list of 10, and that was in July of 2019. And then in October of 2020, we came up with a new list for this work year, and that was 5. And that was Coakia, Arabia Adobe, Gas Company Building, Willard Morton Residence, and Fire Station number 4. I personally think that we should move Fire Station number 4 to next year's work plan and replace it with Union Bank. I do believe that the gas company building should stay as a 3rd priority because it has actually sold, and it is endangered, and it is a very unique, rare example of Ricciardi's work. And Ricciardi was a local architect here who was prominent in the 70s. And it's in danger of being changed. Obviously, it will be flagged and hopefully will come to this board for review if the new owner proposes any exterior changes, but being that it has 100% of its original exterior architectural integrity, I think it is still a very important building and that we should keep it at number 3. So that would be my proposition for how to handle this today.
Mr. Kaiser?
I don't see any downside in changing our plan. This is already written up. This could move forward more quickly, whatever level it falls in. It doesn't cost the city any money, which is always one of the biggest things that we have to consider with that list. Like how much money do we have or don't have? And we really don't have. I mean, that's the reality of it. So if we can get something brought onto the list that could move forward, that we don't have to pay for, I don't see any downside in that. And this is an important building. The bas reliefs themselves are fantastic. Barbara Shirley from the A&D Center used to do a fantastic tour just on those panels. And as a little aside, this is also where Jackie Autry met Gene Autry and became Mrs. Gene Autry right at this bank because she handled his finances. So it's definitely an important part socially in our history as well as architecturally.
I agree too. I agree. Ms. Hanson?
So, Mr. Nelson, your recommendation was to move the fire station to the next plan? Is that?
Next work plan, yeah.
Okay, and then we add in this bank building, correct? As number 3?
No, as number
As 4?
4. But we currently
replace
have
it?
a tie between the Adobes and the gas company.
Okay. I agree.
Mr. Nelson?
I do have one additional comment just to correct the record. I bank at this bank, Union Bank of California presently, and have banked there for over 15 years, and it is really an excellent, wonderful bank. I remember when it was the Palm Springs Playhouse, which was a theater where it had live plays, and that was in between its 2 lives of the bank. And to correct the record, I know this for a fact because my mother was there, but Jackie Autry was a teller at the Bank of America branch in Cathedral City. and that was where Gene Autry did his banking, and that was where they met. So maybe she later moved on to the bank in question today, and they continued their dalliance and their flirtation and affair, but they actually met at the Cathedral City Bank branch on Highway 111, and my mom was in line behind Jackie Autry when this was all going on one of these many occasions. So there you have it.
Mr. Lyon.
Just a point of consideration. If you receive this report, if you decide you wish to put this on your priorities list, it's going to be processed by staff. If you specifically slot it in after some other things, I mean, obviously I've got a couple of them already in play. So Karakia and Arabi are probably going to still both push forward prior to this one. But if you bring this one in at something below the gas company building, it's going to sit here at City Hall until we have resources to pick it up and carry it forward. And so it will also sit here until we have staff resources to do the gas company building, if you choose to put it as a priority below the gas company building. So how you choose to prioritize this will also affect when we are able at a staff level to begin to get this prepared for your consideration.
Mm-hmm. So I would agree that we should proceed with the projects that are ready, rather than, putting it on the shelf. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I think we need to move forward with those that you have mentioned that are ready to move forward without sitting. And I kind of think we're pretty much in agreement, Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, one more comment regarding that. So because the owner of the bank is not in support, and we pretty much have a nomination ready to go, would this be something that would be agenda for our next meeting? Or do we have to receive the nomination at the next meeting and then wait another month to have the public hearing and vote?
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving a big heavy sigh because I have to look at my workload to determine how soon I can prepare this for you. And we have a holiday happening in this coming month as well with the 4th of July, but I can't answer the question with certainty as to when I can have it ready for you. But if you say that this is going to be one that you want to have happen after the ones we're working on right now, I can start working on it. As we would normally do, we would try to schedule site visits of the board. If the owner does not wish to accommodate those site visits, the board would only be able to view this from the public way, as you did with the Racquet Club last year.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Nelson.
So that was kind of a three-part question. So now that I've gotten that answer, the third part is the reason I asked is so clearly it's now going to take some time, probably at least 2 months. And so this leads me to wonder about the possibility that the owner might pursue some type of action or legal avenue to prevent us from hearing this, and to prepare their case that they don't want it designated. And so I'm just a little concerned about how our ordinance is written, that properties without owner consent typically aren't approved for designation by council. And in the past, when we've had a very strong majority on council for historic preservation, I'm just concerned about how this might play out moving forward, given the timing issue, and whether or not staff can speak to that a little bit more.
Can you help me understand a little bit what your concerns are? You mean if you were to not be able to hear this right away and the owner continued to not support the designation, you're concerned that they would then go all the way to the city council with that request to oppose it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if they were able to get a lawyer, for example, involved and send a letter to council, would that then prevent us from hearing the nomination if the council sided with them, or how would that work? Would it have to go through multiple avenues before it went through the council? I'm just a little murky or unclear about how that might all go down.
Yeah, and I am too. I don't know what the legal answer is. You know, could an owner seek some kind of injunction to stop a city action? That's a question that I would need to pose to the city attorney. If the board were to put this on your work plan and move it forward with a recommendation, the owner could oppose that nomination all the way through to city council. So you have that as a possibility, yes. Whether the owner.
If I could just jump in briefly on this.
Thank you.
The benefit of placing this on the city's work plan is that it identifies that there is a public purpose that is served in designating the structure. So by putting it on the work plan and then scheduling it for hearing, we've established a process that it's in the city's interest, and the applicant generally would not be able to take legal action until the city has taken action on the item. So I don't anticipate that there's anything that the applicant could do other than offer their objections to the actions being taken by the Historic Site Preservation Board or the City Council. But again, the whole point in the city doing this is, number one, we've established a public purpose for its preservation. And number two, we've gone through all legal avenues in terms of notification to the property owner. So it protects the city's actions on both fronts.
Thank you, Flynn.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Great, thank you. That really answers my question and really kind of clarifies and clears up a lot of concerns that many of us may have had. So in that case, I would make a motion that we make the Union Bank number 3 on our work plan, which effectively would now be the most important thing because we've already started on Slovakia and the Adobe Rock House, according to Mr. Lyon. So that would shift the gas company down and then make the Morton residence the last one on the current work plan, if everyone is in agreement with that.
Okay. Ms. Hanson.
Does your motion include removing the fire station number 4 and putting it on next year's plan?
It does.
Okay.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Okay. Okay. Is everyone clear with the motion made by Mr. Nelson and second by Ms. Hanson? Is there any other discussion about that?
One
Yes,
One
Mr.
question
Miller.
under discussion on the motion. Just one more question for Mr. Lyon. If the gas company were to come in the interim with a proposal, or the new owner of the gas company site come in with an application to demolish or do some other alteration, that's not gonna be precluded from action from us because we've moved Union Bank up, right? We'll be able to do both, or we'll be able to take appropriate action to stay any proposal there without jeopardizing, I guess, the city's position on the Union Bank as well. I just want to make sure that if the gas company comes in the interim while we're making efforts on the Union Bank designation, we're not going to be precluded from taking quick action on the gas company site, right?
Yeah, the gas company site would be processed as it is. And again, I can confirm before we conclude this meeting, and just looking in the class 3 list, I believe it's class 3. So you have in your ordinance procedures for alterations to class 3 and class 4 sites. Some of them I have authority as the HPO to process those alteration requests, and others, depending on how much is being proposed to be altered, would come before the board.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion before call for the vote? Okay, so I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. So thank you very much for that good discussion. So next we're going to, I believe that completes today's agenda. So next are comments from the board. And I would just like to begin by saying, how great the Preservation Matters Symposium is doing, and people are still watching it, and I'm still hearing about it. And it's just such a fabulous project that I think we need to get started in planning next year. And so I would like to establish a subcommittee for the 2022 Preservation Matters Symposium, and mostly to carry on the great work that Dick Perquette has done for many, many years, and hope that he can offer us some continue to give us advice and evaluate programs. And then of course, I want to thank Dan Kaiser, who did so much. And you did a lot of work on, the tours and site visits that we weren't able to do because we kind of had to put it on hold. So
I've still got them here, and I've still got all the contacts. We had a dozen tours in person lined up for last year. And we were just getting to the point of doing the after party, which I had gotten agreement from O'Donnell Club to do. And that's still my goal, to have new tours, take some of these old ones, and to get our final event at O'Donnell right now, which is now a Class 1 historic site.
Yeah.
And this will be the last symposium that I will be on this board.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to contribute.
We need you to follow through with your good work. And so I would like another volunteer to be on the subcommittee, Mr. Nelson.
Yes, please.
That would be excellent. And then we'll have Dick Perquette help us. Anyone else? You can always give us Ms. Hanson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, I'm assuming you can't have more than a certain amount, so we don't have a quorum working on it, but if there's any subcommittees or, whatever, I don't know as much about Palm Springs as you all do, but I'd be happy to help out if you think there's the way that I could.
So Mr. Lyon, what is the limit for having a subcommittee? Did you say 3? Oh, okay. And then Dick is just an advisor, Dick Perquette. So it would be myself, and it would be Jade and Dan. Correct?
If you wish to do so, yes.
Yes.
Or you could do the others and not be on it if you want as chair. It's up to you.
Okay.
But we could only have 3.
Okay, so we'll go with those 3, and then Ms. Hanson, I will ask for your advice on some things.
Just keep me in mind.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's always so much additional work that somebody can help out on. Like even with the tours, keeping these people close, it has been endless emails, phone calls, birthday wishes, everything. I would be happy to give you half of the list.
It's a lot of hand holding too.
Yes.
Hand holding. So it takes a huge team. So okay, so we'll get working on that, and I thank you for that. Are there any other board member comments, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, I will try to keep these brief. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be part of that subcommittee. I know we have big shoes to fill, but I'm confident that we can meet that goal together. And I wanted to bring up 2 things. I heard through the grapevine, it was brought to my attention that the Class 1 site of Bank of America at the intersection of Palm Canyon Drive and Indian Canyon Drive, 1959, Rudy Baumfeld, Victor Gruen and Associates, with the blue mosaic glass tile, come to my attention that the bank planned to do alteration, remodeling. And I can't reveal my source, but it was a very good source, and I'm a little surprised. So I would like staff to comment on that after I make my second board member comment. And the second comment is about the Class 1 booklet, which is this beautiful little booklet that was originally sponsored by the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation.
Mhm.
And when I was previously on this board, I was involved in the research and writing and compilation of this particular booklet, which my mother was hired to help design. And PFPF eventually redesigned it. And then they made a completely new document with all the Class 1. So I guess my question is really, is there a way that this board, through the city, can create an updated booklet? Because we used to sell this at the counter of the planning department. And before that, there was a wonderful little booklet that a previous HSPB created when Tracy Conrad was a member of that board. And it was a little booklet about the designated site, the Class 1 site. And it was such a wonderful little resource. And people who would come to the planning desk, whether they were locals or visitors or residents or planners or architects, they would see that booklet and it was for sale and they could buy it. It was such a treasure trove of information and facts. Well, we have a lot more Class 1 sites now than we did back then. So, and I don't know if I'm wrong, but I would think that when we had that and we were selling it, that some of that money must have benefited the city or historic preservation or the HSPB. So I guess that's my question to Ken, in addition to the query about the Bank of America remodel. So if you could expound on both of those, I'd appreciate it.
So Mr. Lyon, do you want to do that now, or should we just, you want to do that when we go to staff?
Well, I was
comments?
going to ask how you wanted to handle it. So I'll
okay,
handle it
all
either
right.
way you want.
Okay, well, so let's not forget those two questions, but before then, are there any other questions or comments, board member comments? Okay, so now staff comments. It's yours.
Well, yes, we have been contacted by City National Bank. And yes, they are looking at doing some renovations to the building. They have had some conversations with me, and I have provided them with some historic information that we have from the archives on the building. It sounds to me from the preliminary conversations that I've had with them that there is interest actually in the bank to actually undo some of the rather heavy-handed renovations that have been done in the bank in the past few years. I've not been in this bank recently, but apparently there was a recent project in which they put down what looked like a plank flooring over the terrazzo. And the person who contacted me indicated that they were looking at really trying to do some restoration work on the interior. Those of you that have been in the bank know that there's a rather delightful little old scale near the north entrance, and it was kind of muddied up a bit by the introduction of a new handicap accessible drinking fountain. There had been an old drinking fountain there, and it was integrated with the mosaic tile and the scale. And when they had to make accessibility improvements, the new drinking fountains were just kind of smashed onto the old mosaic tile. So it looks like they're looking to do some restorative work on the interior of the bank. They're also looking at possibly doing some minor modifications on the exterior of the bank with regard to signage. The current sign application was done many years ago, and I explained to them that, again, signage on something like this would come back before the board if they're going to make changes. So I am cautiously optimistic that the work that the bank is looking at this time appears to be in a very positive direction. There have been other minor things that have happened on the site in the last few years. Toward the northerly end of the site, they installed some electric charging stations, which we processed at a staff level. And at the last time that the HSPB considered a certificate of approval on this project, there was an effort to do some relamping of the soffit lights that are under that big canopy. And also we had encouraged them to remove a lot of surface mounted conduit and things that had gone onto that remote teller station island that's there. So overall, the bank seems to be moving in a good direction in terms of what their proposed scope of work is, but we have not received an application yet formally from the bank. With respect to the PSPF book, we actually did not sell that here at the counter. I think it was available at the city's visitor center up at the tramway gas station, but we did not have it available here at the counter. The other previous one that was actually created by the city, you mentioned when Tracy Conrad was on the board, Jade, we did sell that. It became kind of obsolete, and I have the Word document on my computer that I have had as part of my work plan as things that I wanted to try to get redone. We used to publish that when we had a print shop here at the city. We don't have that anymore. And the cost that was associated with the purchase of that thing, which was like $1.50 or something like that, was designed to cover the city's cost. So there was no money gathered or acquired through the sale of those little brochures. But yes, it's been something on my back burner to-do list that I'd like to bring that thing forward and update it and get it reissued if we could. So it'd be an interesting project to do. Or maybe one that we turn to somebody like PSPF and say if they want to do another tribute journal. Those little tribute journals that they've done are well received by the public, but those are their own publications, and they've been gracious enough to provide them to the city and to board members when they produce them, but they're not ones that we sell.
Just as an aside to that, the booklet that we have, the Architecture 100, has all of the Class 1 buildings up to the print date, which was about 2 or 3 years ago or so, give or take. So,
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lyon, for answering those concerns that I had. I was kind of thinking ahead to the Preservation Matters 2022 event and thinking how great it would be if we had a publication that we could sell, but I don't know how that works, if we can sell something and benefit from it, but it would be great to have something that the HSPB publishes and is available for purchase, and how those funds are handled or distributed obviously is an entirely different matter, but I would be curious if that was something that we could do at some point in the future. And to add to my public comments, I just wanted to say a very hearty thank you to Miss Linda Dixon, who has turned out, and today I think was supposed to be her last HSPB meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but she has been a wonderful asset to the HSPB, and we will miss her and her smile and her wonderful, delightful observations and quirky questions.
Absolutely. Mr. Lyon?
In answer to Member Nelson's questions, if the city does produce something like those brochures, we are, I believe, restricted to only be able to charge the cost that it took the city to produce them. The city can't, to my understanding, generate money through the production of things like that. But it is certainly a wonderful project if we can get some time to work on it, pull it together.
Okay. Any additional staff comments?
Yes, I think I've communicated to the board that if you remember some years ago, the city council designated the Crocker Citizens National Bank at 1711 East Palm Canyon Drive as a Class 1 historic site. And we immediately got sued and we lost. And so the court has ordered that the city remove the Class 1 designation and allow the demolition application to be submitted and processed. So we're preparing that for consideration by the city council, I believe at the June 24th city council meeting. Just to bring you up to speed on that one.
What was the address of that again?
1711 East Palm Canyon Drive. It's the bank that's right there by Smoke Tree Village.
Mhm,
It's on the westerly side of Smoke Tree Village.
mhm.
I had something else, and I guess right now it's escaped my head, so I'll leave it at that. Flynn, did you have any comments you wanted to provide?
Just briefly, while the city hall is now open to members of the public, there has been no direction given by the city council as to whether or not our board and commission meetings will come back to in-person meetings. So for the time being, we will continue with the Zoom format for our board and commission meetings. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so having no more comments or discussions, the Historic Site Preservation Board will adjourn today at 7:01 to its regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, July 6th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. on Zoom. So thanks to all for your participation. It was a great meeting and really enjoyed and look forward to continuing with this great team.
And thank you as well.
Thanks, Catherine.
You.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.